My name is Raimundo Reyes, and we're here in Community Advisors RSR. I am the host for Community Advisors, and the co-host is Eduardo Rodriguez from Lula District Council 18. Maria couldn't join us today; she's busy, and she's gonna be here Wednesday. Today we're gonna be talking about the pros and cons of homeschooling. As you know, many kids right now, studying from home, homeschooling. But in a sense, it's just, they're still going to go back to school. But there's a lot of parents who are, you know, when that decision comes in, whether they send their kids to school or they keep them at home, they're going to keep them at home because, we're still dealing with COVID. There's still not a vaccine. There's a process for a vaccine and things are happening. But, you know, parents want the best for their kids. But today we're going to be talking about homeschooling, something that is very important. That whenever for example, here in HISD, we know that more than 51% of parents believe that their kids should stay at home and study from home instead of taking, you know, sending them to school. And usually we have important people come up and talk about about the issues, people who know the pros and the cons of homeschooling. We were going to have a professor, we were going to have an AP teacher, but because of the storm beta, they had to cancel because obviously they have things going on in their life, because driving from work to home, or securing stuff in their home because of the storm. But today we're gonna make it an information, and the best thing about it is that we have Eduardo from LULAC, District Council 18, and he knows a lot of information about homeschooling. Edward, would you like to introduce yourself to the public?
Sure. My name is Ed Rodriguez, and I am a deputy district director, one of the deputy district directors for District 18, LULAC here in the Houston area. We have a lot of people that are part of our organization, and the District 18 actually has jurisdiction over 25 different counties in this area. So we have a lot of people that we try to keep up with. And one of the things that we have noticed and we have been talking about has been homeschooling. Now, before I get started, let me say this. We did invite a lot of people, and a lot of people were interested in showing up here. Unfortunately, the thing is, this storm came out of nowhere and kind of changed everything for us. So hopefully they'll be able to join us on Wednesday when we have our Spanish version. But either way, we'll get somebody in here, and if we have to, we'll do it again. Homeschooling is a big deal this year because of COVID. As my co-host said, 51% of the people in just HISD, Houston Independent School District, have already voiced their opinion saying they want to stay home with their kids. Now, does that mean that all 51% want to be homeschooled? No, but majority of the 51% that are going to be staying home have already put in their paperwork in to change over to homeschool. So what is homeschool? Well, it is exactly what the name implies. It is learning or schooling in the home environment. And how do you do that? Well, I can tell you this. I raised my daughter from second grade all the way till she graduated from high school. And that was my youngest daughter. And the other two went to a public school and they graduated from public school. Um, if you ever had an opportunity to sit down with all three of them, you're going to find that the oldest um, you can tell he's a product of public school. The one in the middle, she's a little bit more go getter, I guess you want to call it, very very strong willed, because she helped us school her sister. So she has the mentality of being in school, and you learn a lot about being in homeschool. Now the little one, who is, I say little one, she's already 28 years old. She can sit down in a room with people that hold doctorate degrees, and I've seen them because I've been in those rooms, and they've asked her, "What school did you go to?" And she goes, "Oh, I was homeschooled." And they just go like, "Huh?" Yeah, because they don't, the homeschool kid is a totally different animal when it comes to academics because everything that you do is broken down in homeschool. Let's say in the morning when you get up, the homeschool kid gets up, and in the morning we say, "All right, we're going to cook breakfast." Well, you and I get up, we just grab the eggs, the bacon, and all that stuff. We start cooking and doing all this. With a homeschool kid, it doesn't work that way. The bacon has to be weighed. The eggs have to be weighed. The temperature of the pan has to be checked. Everything is done because everything that you normally do, that's all part of your class. And that's really cool because the kids, um, they can sleep in as late as they want. I know that sounds crazy, but they can sleep till 10 or 12 or whatever they want to. When they get up, we can cram 8 hours worth of schooling in 2 or 3 hours because they're learning what they want to learn and not what we are trying to teach them. And it becomes totally different. When my daughter wanted to go out and learn how to fly a kite, she had to understand how twine was made, where they made twine. She had to understand how to do the aerodynamics of the kite itself, that triangle. She had to make the paper. She had to make sure that it wasn't too heavy. She had to construct the tail of it and what the length of it did as far as the aerodynamics of flight, the they call it mechanics of flight, all that stuff. It's stuff that they don't teach you in school. She had to learn that and write a paper on it, and then me, the principal, because that's what the parent is. We're the principals and the teachers. Um, we're the ones that have to review it and grade it and talk. And there was a lot of times when I had no clue what she just did. So I too had to go and learn so that I could keep track of what was going on. It was a lot of fun, and that's what the kids in homeschool do. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Definitely. As the public has questions, people who are watching this video or who may watch the video later on today or maybe later on during the week or the next whole month, please drop the comments, here in this social media platform, whether it be, whatever, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. We are mostly in all social media platforms. We serve to provide information to the Hispanic and Latino community. Definitely, Eduardo knows a lot, and we prepare for the show. We were prepared to have some guests, but obviously they couldn't join us. But we are prepared because we have information. We conduct research, and we have this information to provide to all of you. As you know, homeschooling is very important in the sense that it's a topic that is being discussed among parents currently. And as Eduardo mentioned, there's differences about how kids engage in their learning. And then Eduardo mentioned, a kid who is homeschooled can wake up different hour, from a kid who's going to public school, because a kid who goes to public school, he better get up before 7 because he has to go to school, and he has to keep up with the homework that the teachers give him, and he has to do all this, follow this schedule that they have, and hopefully they have a schedule, right? Because we know that right now they're doing learning, online learning, and yeah, so it's a different process. Eduardo was teaching, well, was providing information to me on to how homeschooling works and the pros and cons and benefits. And Eduardo, if you can elaborate maybe on, you know, what would the daily life or the day by day of of a kid who's homeschooled, what's the difference between the one that goes to, to an institution, to a public institution, and ISD, a public education system, and he goes, maybe because today it's online because of COVID, he goes, sits down in a desk if he has the opportunity to have a desk. We know that a lot of Hispanic and Latinos are working families. They work a lot, but they're, because their the jobs, and maybe they pay minimum wage, and parents work an extra above the 40 hours, but they're still not able to have that higher economic status that other people have whenever they provide the kids with a desk, with a private, for a room for them to study, you know. But what's the difference, for between, the kid who goes to public school, who might be right now sitting at a desk, or maybe sitting in a chair in a little corner in the house and doing the homework, between a kid who is homeschooled?
Well, the difference is huge because, like you said, the public school requires a very strict structure. You have to be there at a certain time. You have to be in your classes at a certain time. They tell you every single day what you're going to do and where you're going to be and what you're going to eat and all that good stuff. When you are home, it's different because we our schedule is set up on the um, math, reading, uh, maybe something that they like for physical uh, health and things like that. We structure everything's the same, but the difference is we kind of do old school stuff, reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what we try to do. And so long as we do that, the only other thing that the state of Texas requires is citizenship. We need to show them how to be social, how to deal with stuff, teach them about politics and government and things like. They teach that in regular school, but they don't emphasize the importance of what your job is. Every citizen is responsible for being for making government work, for making society work. But that's not made big deal anymore in school, public schools. It was when I was growing up, but they don't make that a big deal anymore.
You want to
So
interrupt for a minute, Edward? They had a good professor, a good teacher when it comes to politics, because I know you know a lot about politics. Your kids, they know a lot about politics.
yeah, and those are things that we have as well. We get a lot of people that want to know how does this work. Well, you know what? Let me put it to you this way. There was a group of guys 200 little under 250 years ago that didn't like what was going on, and they got together and decided to create a country. It's called the United States of America. And they created a document called the Constitution. That Constitution has lived and survived almost 250 years. It is one of the oldest constitutions in the world. And almost every single one of the people that drafted that were homeschooled. Almost all of them. Now, they did go to college, but when we talk homeschool, we're always talking from, from kindergarten to 12. And so, yes, almost every single one of them was homeschooled.
Interesting
Yeah.
part of the history of the United States of America, because I think you're referring to the United States of America, and it brings me to the question, for the public, if if you don't mind me asking this, what was the difference? Maybe they provided this information, your kids. What was the difference between them whenever they were going to college and the kids who probably went to public school or even a private school? We understand that homeschool might be considered as private school because they're dealing with a private tutor. And that might be the parent, or that might be a person that someone hires, right, to provide that education. You know, maybe can you enlighten us with information as to what's the difference? I assume the kids who go to public school they excel in some certain aspects of the education, but kids who are homeschool, for example, kids who might attend homeschool by the parents, or maybe they hire a tutor, maybe they hire Edward. If they hire Edward, they're gonna know a lot about politics. Is that for sure? They're gonna learn about the civil liberties, the politics. So, what's the difference, Edward, between the performance of the kids whenever they go to college, based on the information that you have received from your kids, in the public? Because you are part of an organization called LULAC, who serves the Hispanic and Latino community. So you have a lot of information. Can you provide us some information on that?
Yeah, I can. And that's something that a lot of people, they already know about, they just don't realize it. And here's what happens. The public school kids, for the most part, they're the general public. So what you hear about, as far as what is the educational level and how much they know when they graduate and all that stuff, that has to do with the public. That's the public schools. Private schools, such as regular private schools or church schools, like Catholic school, that kind of stuff, they tend to be, those kids tend to be a little bit more um, educated because they're being educated based on success, not general knowledge. And that's a big deal. One is being taught general knowledge. All that they try to teach you in public school is enough to put you to work. Get it? You're not designed, they're not telling you how to become the boss. That's not what public schools are about. They're about teaching you how to get a job and pay into the tax rolls. That's what their job is. Okay? Private schools, they teach you how to be leaders in the community. They want you to be that middle management. Okay. So a lot of times what you'll find is in the middle management part of it, you'll find these kids, they graduate from the private schools and they go into these prestigious colleges like Oxford, Yale, Brown University, Stafford, these what we call Ivy League, Rice University, and they go there to learn how to become uh, the leaders in their fields. That's what they're going to be. The homeschool is just the opposite. The homeschooler has no boundaries. The homeschooler learns whatever they want to learn. So if they love art, they become artists. If they love politics, they become politicians. They can do anything they want. So the colleges love homeschoolers. Why? They are the most educated than all the others, number one. Number two, they're also the most idealist. They're the ones that think out of the box because they don't know that there's a box. In public school, you're in a little bitty box, okay? And that little box is designed and built by the government. In private school, you're in a little bitty box, but you built the box. In homeschool, there is no box, so we don't know that there's limitations. And the kids they just take off and do whatever they want to. They learn about music, they learn about reading, they read stories and stuff. My daughter can sit there and she can tell you about things that I sit there and go, wow, even today, because the stuff that she loves to do today was all based on how she was growing up, because there's no curriculum there. So they tend to be a way better. And statistics have shown schoolwork wise, they perform at 78% better than the public school kids, and that's why the colleges love to have them. The only problem is that the parent has to make sure that they document the entire education, just like you do in school, because you're gonna need to create a transcript so you can give to the colleges. The colleges need that transcript, and I've noticed this on the SAT and the other one. I can't remember what the name of that one is, but on the SAT, most homeschoolers usually score within 1 or 200 points of max. That's crazy, but that's the average for the homeschooler. So yeah, it's an amazing deal how you see all these different things. But now I think another thing too we should talk about is how do you get there? How do you become a homeschooler?
Definitely, and that's one of the questions that our public has asked whenever we put this information that we're going to have a show about pros and cons of homeschooling. We had shared that information to our public, and some people had reached out there and asked questions. How do you homeschool? How do you get to that point? How do you make your how do you make homeschooling possible for a parent without making the cost to them, without them, paying out of pocket? Because they don't want to pay for a pocket. If you're Hispanic or Latino, you don't have sometimes you don't have enough money to pay for that. I'm not saying that all of them don't have money, but I'm saying that in general, in a sense, we are a hardworking community. Hispanics and Latinos are hardworking community. Today I can pick up the phone, I can call one of my friends or a buddy or a person that I know, and I can call them. You're gonna tell me, hey, can I call you back? Can I call you later? Or maybe during the night because I'm working. Or can I call you tomorrow? Can I call you during the weekend because they're working? In general, they're not able to provide that money in terms of money, deal, economic aid in a sense to their kid, meaning that to hire a private tutor or to hire someone to provide that school information. So it would be the parent or the dad, but they would need some additional income from maybe the government to provide that money. So maybe Eduardo, if you can enlighten us with the information as to how do you apply to be homeschool, and how do you get the money from the government to be homeschooled? Because schools. It's my understanding that ISDs and schools get funded throughout the taxes of the people who live in the neighborhood. For example, if you live in a certain neighborhood, your taxes, the money that you pay for their house might be, the taxes that you pay for the house, those taxes go to the school. But how does homeschooling work? Can you provide us that information on that?
Yeah, the way it works is this way. Um, First, let's start off with you decide as a parent you want to homeschool. Okay, once you make that decision, the first question out of everybody's mouth, including mine, was, what do we do? How do we do this? This is where do we get the information for all this stuff? Well, we're lucky. In Texas, we have an organization called the Texas Homeschoolers Association, and they help you with all kinds of stuff on that. They have forms because in order to start homeschooling your kids, you have to inform the school district that you're going to be taking the kid out and that you're going to start homeschooling the child. Now, the schools want the parent to show up at school with the student to talk to you about taking your kid out. Why? They don't want you to take the kid out. They lose money. All right. Every kid they have, they end up getting some money, and that's how they get paid. So, yeah, they don't want you to do that. So, it's highly recommended that when you fill the request, and it's not even a request; it's actually a notice. You send it by mail. You never go and talk to them. Never. You send the mail saying, this form says very specifically, my name is so and so, my name is so and so, and we are the parents of such and such kid, and we are here putting you on notice that we will be homeschooling our child, and we were going to be going under the Texas law section so and so so and so, which requires us to tell you that we're going to be homeschooling them, and these are the areas we're going to homeschool, blah 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 blah, and they can't do anything. They're out of luck. Now, money wise, what do you do with the money? Well, it depends. That's one of the biggest fights that we have going right now. Every school district doesn't want to cuff that money up. That's a lot of money. It depends on, like here in Harris County, I don't know precisely how much it is per child, but I know it's a lot. And that to them, the last thing they want to do, when Raimondo said that there's a 51% of the kids don't want to go to school. Oh, they need to register those kids immediately because that's 51% of their budget is gone, and
Okay.
that's a lot of money.
Eduardo, sorry to interrupt. Recently, there was an article that came about in the news where it says about, a big number of students who didn't attend, online school, online learning whenever, because of the pandemic. Mostly because they didn't receive the resources that they needed. They needed a computer, they needed an internet, and there was a big number. And then the controversy was that, besides, kids not being able to attend school and being dropped by the school district, was that, the school district, we're going to lose a lot of money. So a lot of money is also, it pay, a lot of, what I mean by the money is that when a district see that they're going to lose a lot of money, it's like they get a little bit, whoa, because they don't want to lose money because they employ people. They employ, we love our teachers. We appreciate our teachers. Thank you for everything you're doing. And but in the sense of school districts, the money does not only goes to the school to the teachers, it also goes to the, all the operations of the school district. And sometimes there's politics in play, and things happen, and money get lost. But we're not gonna be talking about that today. We're gonna be talking about homeschooling. But there was, like you mentioned, sometimes they don't want to give out the money, and sometimes there's a controversy when it comes to money. Because for example, that article that came into the news, it was like a certain amount of kids they didn't attend school because they didn't receive the resources as they go, online learning. They didn't receive a laptop, they didn't receive internet, and maybe they received it afterwards. But maybe there was in the process, or maybe there was a reaction from the district because the loss of money that we're gonna receive. Hey, you can always find that articles on Google. Go ahead, Eduardo. I apologize for
No, no, it's
interrupting,
okay.
but it was
It's
just
okay.
information that it was useful to the public when it comes to the importance of kids attending school and how much money it costs, how much money the government gives to the school district. But that money is not, the government is not providing that money to school. It means that, yes, the government, signs the money, the check, but that money comes from your taxes. And here in Texas, if whenever you buy a product, you pay taxes. So, it's a clear understanding. It's your money. So it all depends whenever Eduardo's providing information about homeschool. Yes, Eduardo, can you continue, please?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is how much money comes out of your taxes to go directly to that. If you buy something out of that 8.25% of your sales tax, some of that money goes to the school, the local school. And then if you own property, if you're a business owner, or if you're a homeowner, and you're buying, not renting, but buying that property, there's a school tax that you have to pay. All this stuff, adds up. When you have here, like we have here in Houston, about 3 million people. Well, not everybody has a house, but let's just go for a figure of 1 million people. Okay, the average, I think, is right around 350 to maybe $400. So for this example, let's say $500 a year in school taxes. Don't seem like much, uh, but just on that number there, that's $500 times 1 million. That's a lot of money, guys. That's 500 million, a $500 million in just property. So yeah, it's a lot of money, and that money is used to buy, like you said, buy the equipment, keep up the schools, the the libraries that each school has, the books that we get there, the lunches, the school teachers' salaries, administrator salaries. There's just so much that goes on that people don't realize how much money is actually needed by the school. Now, in homeschool environment, you don't need that. Everything you have is at the house already, and your whatever your paycheck is already covering everything. So how come that the parent is able to do everything the school is doing, and it doesn't cost anywhere close? Well, real simple. You don't have 100 buildings to take care of. You don't have all these different yards you got to cut. You don't have all these maintenance guys that have to go out there and take care of all these buildings. You just got you. And guess who your maintenance guy is? Yep, you got it. It's your kid, your son and your daughter. They're the ones that go out and cut the grass for you. They're the ones that take out the trash. So there's your maintenance right there. They don't cost anything. So in the end, they're able to use all these different things as part of their class. Because in order for them to cut grass, they had to know about chemicals, proper storage of chemicals, because gasoline has to go into it. The lawnmower. When you cut in the lawnmower itself, turning on the lawnmower, if it doesn't work, there's mechanics. Yep, you got to do mechanical engineering. You got to fix that sucker and make it run. And once you do get it running, you're cutting the grass. There's a pattern on how to cut your grass out there. You have to know how much square feet and all this. All this stuff, they write this stuff down. It's a class. Now, your son and your daughter are going to sit there and say, Dad, this is not a class. I'm cutting the grass. I'm taking out the trash. Yeah, but it is a class. Even though you still got to take out the trash, it is a class. And those things are very important. So going back to how do we get all this? The association gives you all the forms you need to notify the schools so that you can go ahead and start homeschooling. And then once the schools are notified, then you can go ahead and start doing everything you want to do. The only hard part about homeschooling in the state of Texas is that there are very few academic sports stuff that you can get involved in. Now, we're working on that because the state has a law that they passed that a homeschool kid that lives in Houston, he has the right to go to the local school and join the baseball team, the basketball team, and all that. But wait a minute, he's not going to that school. No, he's not. But he has a right to public health. He has a right to sports. And unless there's an organized sports deal in his area, then he's allowed to go ahead and go to the local school to get that done. He may not play, but he'll have a right to go ahead and at least practice with the team and all that stuff. And when he gets out, maybe he can go somewhere else and get that. But there's a lot of little things like that that you have to look into. There's monies as far as the state. There's monies as far as foundations. There's schools that will give you extra credit. And don't forget, your son and your daughter are still students. So they're still allowed to go and get a free bus pass. They're still allowed to have a school ID, albeit you're going to have to design it and make it and get it laminated. But you can do that, after you do all that stuff, you can take that over to Office Depot and they will print it on card stock, laminate it, looks real pretty, real professional, and you use that to get into the movies, to the zoo, to the museum, all that stuff. You're still a student. And that's one of the things that we did for our when my daughter got to high school, she designed her Letterman's jacket, but I had to buy it. She picked out the colors, she picked out everything she wanted on there, but I had to buy it. It was a little expensive, but it was worth it. After 12 years, it was worth it. So, anyways,
Definitely. If sorry to interrupt it, well, I know you're passing very important information as to how to apply, where to get the resources, but I just want to let the public know, people who are viewing us, if you have any questions about homeschooling, the pros and the cons, please drop those comments on here in the comment section. And Eduardo Rodriguez, a member for LULAC District Council 18, is going to respond to those questions. And he has some information about homeschooling, and he's providing information, personal information. Also, he knows about the legal implications. He knows about the research available, and we're talking about the pros and cons of homeschooling. I just want to make sure that that everybody knows this. We're not talking anything bad about the ISD districts or anything about the teachers, because we love our teachers. We love our professor teachers, the people who help in that process, the mentors. And I'm a product of HISD in a sense, but today we're living throughout a pandemic called COVID-19, and a lot of parents don't want to send their kids to school in person. And whenever that decision comes about, whether they are forced to or whenever they're given the option, you're gonna probably just say, I want my kids to stay at home, like the 51% that Eduardo has mentioned, right? Obviously, there's parents who have homeschooled their kids before the pandemic, and there's nothing wrong about it. Today, the reason for the show today is because we saw an increase in the number, more than 50%, that said, I want to homeschool my kid, or I want my kids to stay at home, not go to school in person. Because what happens then, whenever the kid, whenever they go to school and, there's a pandemic, someone contracts the virus, are you going to test all the kids and all that? And what's the process? Obviously, we can tell you this. We had a show, we had multiple shows on, schools reopening. And you can go back in our Facebook page here at Community Advisors RSR, here on Facebook, here on Instagram, here on Twitter, here on YouTube, here on TikTok, and you can find, and here in LinkedIn also, and you can find that information. It's user information provided directly by trustees, provided directly by superintendents. Such information coming directly from people who are in charge, making sure your kids receive the highest and the most important education. But our goal today is just to provide that information in case a parent wants to homeschool their kid, wants to have the resources, we're going to provide that. So please drop any comments and questions that you have in here. And even if you're watching this video past, right now we're doing live, but you're watching it later, drop those comments and we're going to pass that information to Eduardo. And whenever on Wednesday we get our guests of honor, because they were going to be here today, but because of the beta, that storm, we're not able to be here because they have to drive from the workplace home, and because it's raining and the traffic, and then they also have to secure their belongings in their home in hopes that they don't get flooded. And they're on our prayers. Hopefully they're safe. But if they're able to join us on Wednesday, we're gonna ask them this. Whatever questions you have, we're gonna ask them on Wednesday. Obviously on Wednesday we have our shows in Spanish. Eduardo, Can you elaborate maybe on, you know, on the forms? What does the parent have to provide? Maybe do they have to provide an ID? Maybe they have to provide, you know, the address. Maybe they have to provide, you know, if they have the resources, maybe they have a computer. What's required maybe to homeschool your a kid? And maybe you're a parent and you're hearing this information. Maybe you're asking yourself, what do I have to do to homeschool my kid? What's the resources that I'm required to do so? And what's the money that the government might provide to me from homeschool? And what's the money they have to pay out of pocket? Can you provide some information on that?
Yeah, the information that you're going to have to provide is real simple. The letter that notifies the school district is very, very basic. It'll have your name, your address, phone number, the name of the student. If there's an ID number that's attached to the student, which usually is on the report card, you use that ID number along with that, so that way they know they got the right student. And but then after that, you have paperwork that you can also file with the individual state, and that particular one has a little bit more information that is required. You're gonna put down stuff, as far as your ethnic race background, the school that they were attending before, the curriculum that you plan on using, whether it's a Christian-based curriculum, whether it's a science-based curriculum, or if it's just a curriculum that you're going to put together. In either case, there's a guide that they say you need to show that you're going to be given reading, writing, and arithmetic and citizenship. But so long as whatever you decide to put together covers all four of those, and you meet the mandate of the state. And it's really easy. There's tons of programs out there. The amount of money depends on how much you want to spend. There are programs out there. One is called the it's Seton Ann Homeschool Edition. It runs anywhere between a few $100s to a couple of $1,000. Depends on what you want to do. But majority, the average, I would say the average cost is around maybe $80 to $100 per kid per year. It's not that expensive. Why is it so low? Well, it's better to say it this way. It's not that it's low, is that there's so many in the homeschooling community in Texas that they literally list their books. So when you buy a book brand new, there's a place online where you can put that book and rent it out or sell it to somebody, either way, and make your money back. And that's one way of looking at it. Or if you have a lot of kids, you hang on to the same book because that same book can be used next year and next year and so on and so on. When a new edition comes out, you can either add the additions to it or just buy a brand new book. But there's ways around that, and a lot of the what we found, anyways, a lot of the distributors for books, a lot of the publishers, they'll take the old books back and give you a new one, an updated version. So that's also good to know. So there's quite a bit. But on the government side, let me just throw this in there. There's very little money that comes from the government itself. Now, you can make money basically, but it doesn't come in the form of a check. It comes in the form of a tax deduction because you're doing the stuff at the house. So
Thank you for that information, Eduardo. And it's very important because you can use it as tax deductible whenever you're filing in Texas, and that way, it's just information here this time because of the pandemic. Um, Definitely, Eduardo. One question that we have from the public is that how do you develop a course for I'm seeing here a question that I received from the public. I was just seeing here, and they were saying, how do you develop a course and how do you make the transcript that you receive that you make up that the government receives, making a transcript that is acceptable for colleges, because maybe you want to send your kid to a higher institution learning that it's a little bit higher. Maybe you don't want them to go to a university that it's not in the higher ranks. Maybe you look at the numbers and you say, oh, I want to send him to an Ivy League school, or maybe something that's close to that. So how does that work?
that's a great question. Let me explain to you this way. Again, the state already tells you what you have to have. How do you build that? Well, it's really not that hard. Think about it. I'll give you an example. let's say that in our home, we know how to make tortillas, right? So we're going to use that as an example. When we sit the kid down to make tortillas, they're going to have to measure how much flour, how much salt, how much baking soda, all this stuff that you have to put into the masa so that you can get this thing going. Okay. Well, that's all arithmetic. Okay. You have to read the recipe. There's the reading. All right. Now you have the what? Reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, as they're doing what they're doing, you have them write down what they see. You write down, okay, well, how much did you have to do? I had to, I spent 10 minutes on kneading the dough, 10 minutes kneading the dough. I had to pour the water into the deal. I had to pour the water. They write all, so you got reading, writing, arithmetic. So how does the citizenship come through there? Well, the citizenship part is really simple too. I make tortillas for all my family. I make tortillas for my abuela or my abuelo. I make tortillas for my cousins. I make tortillas for my neighbor. There's a social aspect, there's a citizenship aspect of what we're trying to do there. So you end up with a really easy way of doing all this stuff. When they write things down, you're going to review everything they wrote down to see if it matches this curriculum. Did they read it? Did they write? Did they do the arithmetic? And did they show that that's going to be applied in a social way? You say, yeah, okay. Once you have all these things and you're able to put things down like that, you're going to give it a grade. Once you have the grade, then you start keeping all these papers in a file or a folder. And each folder will represent like one semester of the grade. You got first semester, second semester, third semester, fourth semester, however many semesters you want to have. And I think it goes up to like you can go up to 7 or 8, something like that. The point is, you keep a folder for each one of the semesters. At the end of the semester, you're gonna make an average grade of every paper that's in there. So if there's one that's 97, if there's one that's 34, if there's one that's 50, you're gonna add all these things up, and you're gonna create an average grade for the semester. That semester grade is going to be what you're going to write down in the transcript. Where do you get the transcript? The transcripts are available online anywhere. You don't have a computer, not a problem. You can go down to any library. Almost every library, number one, has a computer. Number two, most of the libraries that I've seen has some kind of material on hand already that explains homeschooling. So you can get the form there and make a copy of it, or you can get the librarian to make the copy for you, and then you take that home, or you can start from scratch. All you have to do is just keep a book, a running book of each semester of all the grades, and also make sure that you include field trips. You include extracurricular activities like learning how to play the flute, throwing the ball, learning baseball, things like that. Make sure you write all that stuff down as well. If they go and they do talking, if they volunteer at at the food bank, if they go to the church and they help with service, if they go to Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever they join, whatever they do, everything has to be written down as a either extracurricular activity or something to that effect. Now, as you get to the end of the year, you're going to add all 4 semesters or 5 or 6 or whatever it is, and you're going to give a yearly grade. That yearly grade says everything is really good, and that means that that one year is covered by your transcript. So now you have a transcript for one particular grade, and you just hang on to all these transcripts as the kid is going through each one of the stages. Most colleges, all they want is a high school transcript, which is from 10th grade to, from 10, 11, and 12. So you got that. You shouldn't have any problem getting the kid in there. Now, how do I get my kid into college? Of what college I want? Before they graduate, or better yet, before you graduate the child, because believe it or not, the child's going to let you know when they want to be graduating. My girl graduated when she turned 17. She had her last exam that I gave her. and we did a little certificate and a little plaque, and we gave her all this stuff. It was really nice, a little graduation deal. But some kids learn fast, man, and they're able to learn as much in 10 years or 11 years. And at the end of 11 or 12 years old, they're ready to go to college. That's why you ever saw that show that, we all hear, Big Bang Theory. Hey, that kid Sheldon was one of those kind of kids. He was a kid that went to school when he was 11 because he learned everything in high school. There was nothing there for him left to learn. So a kid like that goes. Homeschool kids end up like that. Public school kids also end up like that, but it's very rare that they're public school. Most are either going to be private tutors, private schools, or homeschoolers that are in that age group that go to college when they're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And they graduate with all these doctorate degrees by the time they're 24, and everybody's like, "Man, you're only 24 years old and you got 3 doctorate degrees?" Well, I was working on my other one, but I thought I'd take a break. Wow. So you have to remember all this stuff. So the way you do it is, if you want your kid to go to Brown University, Rice University, University of Houston, or wherever you want to go, you contact them on their last year and get a hold of the counselor. Once you have one of the counselors there, they will help you and they will work with you and they will guide you so that you can get all your transcripts the way they want it, that you get all the stuff that they want, prepare for the interviews, get the SAT ready to go, and all that stuff. So by the time you graduate, they already got almost all the paperwork ready to go. That all you got to do is sign up and go to school. And there's most of the time 80% of the homeschoolers get full scholarships. Can't beat that.
Interesting information. Thank you for sharing that information, Eduardo. And data, data and information that extracts that speaks for itself. And thank you for providing the information. We know that information is based on data and facts. And like Eduardo was saying, people, schools, universities, people who are in charge in those offices, who get hired, they will work with you to get your kids to school. Some of the counselors may work with you. Sometimes you get some that might not want to work with you, maybe because they're having a bad day, or maybe they just don't want to do it. It's always that we're all human beings, but at the end of the day, you can find someone, and they might be able to work with you, tell you about the process and everything. It's a process to go to school, to go to college. It's a definitely a difficult. Not difficult, but it's a process that you go through. And I assume that being homeschool for the parent, it's more a difficult process. Sometimes for those of us who attend who have attended a public institution, like an ISD, and sometimes whenever we apply for colleges, sometimes that there's centers for the schools to provide that information. But even then, because we're Hispanic and Latinos, we know that we make a small percentage of the people who go to college. I'm pretty happy because in this year, in the last year, Hispanics and Latinos turned out to go to college was a little bit higher. It's my understanding, but usually we don't make that high percentage. And when it comes to Mexican Americans or Mexicans who attend higher institution of learning, usually the percentage is small. Depending, it might be first generation, second generation, third generation. It doesn't matter. It's still small compared to other Hispanic and Latinos, but collectively, it's still small compared to others. What I'm trying to say is that applying for college is a difficult process. I assume that applying for college, be it through homeschool, is even a furthermore burden to the parent. If you're Hispanic Latino, it's a burden to the parent. How do you apply? But that information, today we are providing that information. Eduardo has some information where you can go, what institution, what organization can provide that information to you, what website you can go to, and how do you do that? Who's able to work with you, and what government institution can work with you if you want to homeschool your kid, and then throughout their high school career, their education, you know, and then send them to college. Or maybe you just want to homeschool for this year until the pandemic, stops. Maybe next year, whenever the pandemic, there's a vaccine, if people are able to take that shot, maybe you want to send them back to school. But it's useful information. And if like we had mentioned before, if you have any comments, concerning questions, please drop it in the comment section, and we will be happy to respond to those questions. Wednesday, we're gonna have our guests because they couldn't join us today. Like once again, we repeat that they were we were dealing with a storm. We were understandable why they couldn't join us, but they're gonna if we drop the questions, we're gonna ask them on Wednesday, and on Wednesday you're gonna be able to respond to the questions that you have. Professionals, obviously, Eduardo is a professional. Like his word stands, and he has data and facts. And plus, he's a member of LULAC, District Council 18. So that's information that you can use that's useful. If you have any comments and questions and concerns, please drop it in the comment section. Thank you. Eduardo, can you provide more information as to, uh, you know, today people are sitting down watching this live video, and maybe they're not watching it live, maybe they're watching afterwards, and they're thinking, homeschool is pretty interesting. In a couple of weeks, my kid is gonna go back to school. They're gonna call me, tell me, you know, my kid can go back to school or he can be stay online learning. But in 3 weeks afterwards, I'm gonna call. They're gonna receive a call whether you're gonna stay online learning or they're gonna go back to school. Eventually, they're gonna receive that call, come back to school. But they're gonna be. I don't want to send my kid to school because of COVID. Obviously, like we had mentioned before, we have had some shows with very important people, guests of honor. You can go back and watch those videos, 1 hour and 15 minutes, where they talk about the research available, things that they have done, and things that they're doing to help the Hispanic and Latino and in kids in general. You can go back and watch them. But if they're sitting today, the parents, and say, oh yeah, I want to homeschool my kid, what's the first thing they have to do? What's the very first thing they have to do?
The very first thing you got to do is you got to say, how am I, the parent, going to be able to be here for them during the school period? Because you're going to have to be there to help them get all this stuff going. Now, if you have an older child, I say older child, a child say that's 12 years old or older, who's already in the sixth grade or something like that, they can help you out a lot. It's not that difficult to do. But as a parent, you're still going to have to be somewhat flexible enough to be able to go to work, come back, and all that stuff. If you work in a job like in a bank or something like that where you have to be there, then obviously you're not going to be able to do that. So you need to ask yourself, do I want to homeschool them? Yes. Okay. Then the next thing is, after you realize I can't do it, who in the family can? The good thing about the Hispanic community, and if we remember our culture, in the Hispanic community, we always have abuela sitting around somewhere waiting to be used, and she can come over and help. And oh man, that is just a great deal too. You maybe have a tia or a sister or somebody who's sitting at the house with her own kids, but the kids are only 3 or 4 years old, so she can't go to work yet. But hey, you can send your kids over there, and she can train them for a little while. There's a lot of things that you can do, but you're going to have to work hand in hand to get this is going. It's a great program if you use it correctly, and there's a lot of reasons to homeschool, not just because you want to do it, or even the kids. Well, right off the bat, kids will tell you, "Man, I want to do it right now. I want to homeschool." Yeah, because you don't have to wake up early. You don't have to do nothing. No, it doesn't work that way. Um, but there are a lot of good ways. Sometimes we end up with kids who are hanging out with the wrong crowd in school. Maybe it's a good idea to bring them home and homeschool them. That way they're not part of that little clique or gang at the school and where they're getting in trouble all the time. Sometimes they're getting bullied. Maybe it's a good idea to bring them home and let them do their work and stuff and learn how to do the homeschool that way. Maybe they're just intimidated. Some kids nowadays, they're it's school is it's very complex for a lot of the children that are coming from other countries. Why is that a big deal? Well, you have to look at the dropout rate. Right here in Harris County, in general, we have a very high dropout rate, and the reason is because we get a lot of kids from other countries, and they come up here and they don't know English, And the rules here in the state of Texas are they must teach English as a second language, but only up to the second grade. So once you get to the second grade, the schools no longer have to do that, you know. So now what? Well, the kids don't have an opportunity to learn, and they're tagged as special kids. And special kids, all that really means is they're going to stick them in a room, and they're not going to teach them anything. And then they get bored because they're not learning anything. So they would rather go home and not tell their parents and start working or start doing getting in trouble, whatever. When we lost those kids, and homeschooling could be a way to make sure that doesn't happen. But again, that's where LULAC, that's where other organizations, that's where the church and all the religious leaders, they need to get together and they need to solve these. These are social problems. These are not government problems. These are things that we as volunteers, we as retirees, we need to get in there and say, hey, let me show you a better way. Let me give you an idea as to how we can save some of these kids so that we don't have to pay for them down the road. It's much better to have them succeed, get a job, and pay taxes into the payroll, into the tax rolls, than it is for them to become a statistic, get thrown in jail, and our taxes go up to take care of them while they're in jail. Not a good deal. Not a good deal.
Definitely, I understand, and it's like a brother mentioned, you don't want it to be a part of statistic that it's very troubling, and people are currently dealing with that. What I mean? And here in Harris County, here in Texas, and nationally, they're dealing with a problem about statistics, people who are being in prison, and that's another topic we're gonna have later on. And as we progress in this community advisor RSR, obviously we already have in our schedule, and we have already invited some important guests, and some of those guests, sometimes we don't announce the guests because we want that moment of suspense, for us to for us to say whoa this way whenever people are on the live and you watch the person who we invited, it's like whoa, did he just really invite that person? It's like yes, we invited him because he's an elected official. He's providing that information. Even thought you may or may not agree with that person. It's a person that's in charge of an office. He or she provides makes decisions and is able to provide that information for us in the Hispanic and Latino community. And the reason we mention Hispanic and Latino community is not that we don't want this information to go to beyond the Hispanic and Latino community. We obviously want that, but when it comes to the Hispanic and Latino community, there's a to provide information. The Hispanic and Latino community, there's no institution or news agency that provides facts and data information and to the community and provides direct information, the liberty to talk to the elected officials for them to provide that information, and whenever also to provide ask questions. And sometimes the public asks questions, and those questions are a little bit tough to the people we have as guests. We ask those questions regardless, and they answer those questions. And that's the beauty of our show. That we are able to interview people and provide that information, and it's information that it's facts and data. And whenever it's not facts and data, and the person we're interviewing that we brought as a guest provides something that is wrong, we can question right away. Wait a minute, these things that are happening in our community. Do we address this information? You're providing information that it's not correctly right. So, anyways, that being said, have a great day, a great evening, and thank you for watching Community Advisors RSR. And we see you on Wednesday at 7 p.m. And it's an hour long show, 1 hour and 50 minutes to be exact. And we're gonna be talking about the pros and cons of homeschooling in Spanish. So the community who's only Spanish speaking, please invite them to watch the show. And always, remember, community advisors are sorry, it's here for you, the Hispanic and Latino community. Eduardo, any final comments?
I agree. Just be there for us. We're looking for a lot of good things to happen on these different talks that we have. We have a lot of people that we're getting ready to line up. We've got some great talks coming up in the future. right now with all the different things that are happening, like the COVID and the elections, and with the justice that we just lost on the Supreme Court. There's a lot of things that are happening, and it's going to be happening really, really fast. And we're going to try to get people in here that you're going to be thinking, what? How did these guys get this guy? Oh yes, like you said, we're going to get these people that nobody else would think that we could get. We're going to get them. They're going to be on our show, and you're going to sit there and go, man, look at this. I can't believe these guys got him. Oh yes, yes, we're going to have some really good names coming up. So be prepared, be watching, be ready for it, because we'll let you know when they get ready to come on board. But we're that close to some really good stuff happening.
All right, awesome. Thank you for watching us. Have a great evening. Nosotros somos la voz del pueblo. Have a great evening. Oh.